just a reminder, with archery, it never hurts to kind of take a step back and look and review your own fundamentals. Because in my mind, a big part of being an accurate and effective archer is your ability to focus on what you're doing and what your target is doing, as opposed to all the stuff that leads up to that. So a big part of that is maintaining an absolutely stable and consistent firing position every time. Is that how it's going to be out on the field? No. We're going to be moving around, we might be doing this, we might be doing, hiding, moving back and forth, forward and back, left and right, whatever. But the more consistent you are in your own firing position, you can adjust for that, and it's one less thing you have to worry about. Okay? So, obviously safety, the biggest thing I want to reiterate, and I mentioned it at the class today, is that remember that we're taking something that by its design is inherently designed to maim or kill, and we're making it safe enough to shoot at people's heads. We are taking something that by its design could maim or kill somebody, and we're making it safe enough to shoot at people's heads. Your judgment as the archer, and unless you happen to be Jean Grey and have telekinetic powers, your judgment ends the minute that arrow leaves your bow. So sometimes the safest action is not to take action. I know that's tough, but again, we're out here, and it was already touched on that a lot of times archers don't have the best reputation out there on the field. I'd rather try not to add to that if I can avoid it. Okay, so next thing I'm going to cover is some of the recommended equipment for you as a combat archer. Now, again, it really depends on what kind of archer you want to be. Do you want to be a mobile one? Do you want to be skirmisher? Do you like being supporting the line? Or do you like, one of my favorite is counter sniper, where I'm going after the other archers. It really depends, and just kind of building your kit around that. So one of the things I do recommend is a quiver. Yes?
What if you don't know what kind of archer you want to be yet?
It's going to be everything.
Okay.
But just bear in mind that the different roles like that have different shooting requirements. Like, I'll take example of counter sniping. For me personally, it requires that I have to have good arrows that can go longer range than typical ones, because I'm trying to hit a much farther target away than typically somebody supporting a line, for instance. Okay. So, talk about a quiver, or some means of holding your arrows. And you can see I actually have a couple here. So first one is a hip quiver. If you're not already a part of the if you're on Facebook and you're a part of the Belegarth Archers group, there's a pattern for this quiver on there if you're interested. So this all started with a a cordless drill holster. If anybody's ever had them, they're okay to start with. You might get 5 arrows if you're lucky. The minute you do this, it all dumps out. It's super frustrating. So I just kind of took this and I made the belt loop wider so it doesn't tip over. I made it much bigger so I can hold, with this one I can hold 12 arrows in here all together. So some of the advantages of this, in my opinion, this is a faster load than the back, but either one, as long as you get comfortable how you're drawing your arrows and make that part of your training, it's going to be, it will help to mitigate any of your issues with that. So obviously one of the challenges of this is that it can get caught up in your legs, or sometimes it might get hit. That is a risk you take by having this. And if you're shorter, one of the things I've noticed is that this particular pattern, if you get low enough, it doesn't take much to get your nocks into the ground. So something to keep in, one thing you could do with this is adjust the angle so it's a little more this way as opposed to vertical. And if you go down on the knee, and I've had this happen, like the nocks will plant and then I go down, and then I can feel them flexing. Like, ugh. But again, just some things to bear in mind. But these are super easy to load and super easy to reload, in my opinion. Much easier than back quivers. But again, as I mentioned, this one is definitely more vulnerable to getting hit. Now, back quivers, they're nice because they're on your back. They don't impede your mobility in any way. So you're here as long as it's sitting above basically your hips, or I mean, excuse me, your waist, and you shouldn't have any problems with moving around. If that's the kind of thing you prefer doing, then a back quiver. However, if your arms are short, like mine are, you have to be aware of that and how you're drawing your arrows. You know, I don't have long enough arms that I can do this in one movement. But however you do it, I highly recommend you practice it so it starts becoming pretty much second nature for you. This is a little bit harder to reload than a hip quiver, in my opinion. But again, with practice, and kind of why I'll talk about the rest of the stuff that I have in here. Take these out. So the other things I recommend is a sidearm of some kind, but that really depends on whether you're comfortable going into the melee or not. If you're not, that's okay too. But if somebody charges me, I'm not going to run away typically. I will draw this and I will fight, and then I will spin around and use my back shield as coverage. Just as a general tip, usually when somebody charges you, they're coming straight at you, going right down and taking their leg on the way, unless you're going to shoot them. However, be mindful, don't shoot them full broad under 20 feet. This drawing my melee weapon is usually the way I will go. So there's obviously you can see here I have this quiver. There's also, if you haven't seen those already, Gorix sells those pick clips, which they go on your belt loop, and then they have the, yep, just like those. And they do sell ones that are also at an angle too, if you prefer that on the left or right side.
Yeah, if your sword's longer, the angle makes the difference.
Ooh,
yeah.
I have to look into that.
Or if you're short.
And you can also,
Not really a concern.
another option is if you have, you can make a custom one of just a loop with a belt loop plus a loop there to hold your sword. I have that, but it only works if I have a sword with a crossguard. And who uses crossguards nowadays? So, anyway. And finally, the last thing I like to have is armor, especially on my head. Because I will tell you, as a combat archer, if you have a helmet on and somebody next to you doesn't, the one who's not wearing the helmet tends to be the target I'm going to be going for, because that's just limiting the amount of target area that I can shoot. So, and like I said, that's why I had the coif and the mask there to basically cover my entire head. Another thing is also people will have a armor bracer, especially on their bow arm, just because that also, in addition to being armor, can also protect the inside of your forearm. Just keep in mind that watch for your gap in your bracer if you're going around, so you don't have it's either too wide, so that gap could actually get hit, or usually if you're doing it for archery, they'll flip it around so the contiguous surface is on the inside, and then the outside is open, and sometimes there's a gap there. Okay? Does anybody have any questions so far on what I've covered?
How do you get your shield off in a hurry? Or do you just leave it on the back?
With this one, no, I don't. So my normal kit, I have just a sling, single strap, so I can easily just lift it up, and then I'll put it. A lot of times I'll do that when I end up being like one of the last people on the field, and I'll just go to melee.
What do you do with your bow when they get close too?
Normally, if they charge me, I'll immediately put it. I'll put it here, off to the side. Just kind of a safety thing. Just bear in mind that these tips, smaller than an eye socket, and I don't know if you've ever been hit by one of these, but they hurt. And they're also usually a bendable material, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be solid when you hit them. And that also goes for people who are charging it too. So don't do this when they when they charge you. Okay?
When I walked up, you were talking about a fixed bow position. Could you demonstrate that?
So the idea is that whatever shooting position you have, when I go this way, if you watch how I go, it's almost the same every single time. And that's what I mean by a fixed bow position, is that you have a consistent shooting technique and you do it every single shot. That makes sense?
Okay, so how would you modify it for shorter range, longer range?
Okay, for shorter range, I leave it pretty much the same. It's just controlling how far back my arm is. Now,
Okay.
if I'm going for longer range shots, what I do is I keep this, I tilt at the hip.
Okay.
So notice that my upper body is basically staying at the same relative position. The only thing I'm changing is my elevation.
Do you anchor your right hand that you're pulling back? Like, I've had someone give advice to always touch the same part of my cheek or always touch the same part of my shirt.
That's definitely a technique. I just use my draw stop.
You just use your draw stop?
So I know that once I'm here, that's my anchor point.
Okay.
And I really don't have a specific anchor point on my face for when I draw.
Okay.
Okay.
What about breathing? Do you have any special breathing habits when you shoot? Especially combat, because like, I feel like you can hold your breath or get excited or...
So that's a really good question. Personally, and this might just be me, I find archery, especially on the field, to be almost Zen meditative.
Really?
All I'm focusing on is what is my target doing and how am I lining myself up to make that shot. I try to calm myself internally because I know there's so much going on at the time, but I know that if I let any of those external influences, they can impact how accurate I am. So part of the consistency is that whether somebody's charging me, whether people are shooting at me, I'm not letting that get to me while I'm shooting.
Okay, so you wouldn't necessarily recommend breathing out when you shoot. You would recommend breathing slowly and steadily the whole time.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
And being out, to me, a lot of what archery is, especially on the field, is control of yourself.
Okay.
I didn't really think about it that way, but yeah.
Yeah.
That is, that's the only way that I found that I'm going to be able to consistently hit a target is if I'm controlling everything that I can possibly control.
Okay.
So I can't control, what the target does, but I can control how I'm coming up, how I'm coming down, what I'm feeling, how I'm moving. All of that is under my control.
Speaking of control, and I'm sorry if I have too many questions, what about half draw? Do you have advice on how to control that consistency of adjustment?
No, not really, other than you'd be surprised at how far a half draw can go. It goes very, it's not full speed compared to a full draw, but at at shorter range, it's still covering the same distance in almost about the same amount of time.
And how do you anchor point on a half draw?
I kind of just do this, really.
Maybe it's just muscle memory and I haven't learned it yet. Yeah.
So I would say it's basically just a feel. When
Okay.
I feel like I have about halfway of my energy versus going to a full draw.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is target priorities as a combat archer. And I think we talked a little bit about this in tactics class actually. Does anybody here not know what a power player is, or doesn't know a power player?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you start judging people?
I'd say realistically at least an 8, 9, or 10 in terms of threat level.
Yeah, that's how I start picking out people.
Yes.
It's like that person's a 10, that person's an 8, that person's a 9.
So, and then also leaders. If you can hear somebody who's driving the bus out there, directing people, that's a target. So obviously, you know, kind of to put it, they're using their influence, their tactical ability, their knowledge, and they're influencing how the battle is going. So in my mind, that's how you can disrupt the other side, is by taking out those, either the power players or the leaders. Now power players, sometimes, you know, just shooting them in the leg is, you know, kind of, it limit their mobility, can have a huge impact, especially if you're good enough / lucky enough to hit them while they're moving, which that's always a fun thing to do. And then next priority, obviously, is other archers, because you're trying to do to their side, or they're trying to do what to your side what you're trying to do to theirs.
Oops.
Next one is pole arms, spears, and red weapons. And the reason for that is because they can engage your fighters outside of melee range. So especially if you've got a 6 or an 8 foot spear, they can do a lot of damage. I don't know, is anybody familiar with the sewing machine?
Yes.
Two combined spears working together in tandem. As a shield person, it's not fun to be on the receiving end of that
You
one.
get to pick which kidney you lose, and that's fine.
But yeah, and also they can break shields, and also they can they go through armor in a single shot. So that's why, again, why I will target pole arms and spears and other red weapons. The next one is dual wielders. I mean, I know it sucks to do flow sometimes on the melee field, because you are, you know, by our rules, you're not allowed to actively swing at weapon or swing at arrows. So that kind of cuts down some of their ability to block your arrows. But that is a target priority if they're available.
They're free.
That's
Shoot.
a choice that they made. Let them regret their choice.
And if there were, you know, a lot of them will go out with back shields too. So there is that.
Or if they're smart, they'll have a helmet.
That also.
So,
And even though I listed them in this particular order, depending on what the field is like, that may not be the order. It may be, you know, that you really need to prioritize getting the pole arms out first, versus if there's anybody who's actually a leader out there, or, you know, trying to just whittle down their numbers, as opposed to going for specific targets. Okay?
Would game mechanics change your preference? Like if there's respawn or not, if there's healing or not?
No, not really. Other than just it impacts my ability to respawn, because I have to go get I have to get my arrows before I want to respawn. So it may take me out of the fight a little bit longer.
have you ever been to War?
Huh?
The game War. Militia has it. It's a war game with hard points, and you have regens like that, healing spells.
I've heard of it, but I
Yeah,
don't think I've actually done
I
it.
noticed the point would be more to kill the person instead of maiming the person. But like you said, the problem is if you die, you have to go get arrows and stuff like that.
Yep. Okay, so some of the other things that you can do. If you see an archer taking a shot, even if you may not necessarily hit them, if you land close enough to them, that can sometimes just be enough for them to spoil the shot. Like, oh crap.
You see something go past your face.
Yeah.
You're
Or
busy
you see
done.
something land at your feet, or something that bounces and slips and continues on past your feet. It's like, oh, there's an archer out there who's targeting me. Sometimes that can be enough to disrupt their shot.
Birds fly by, and like a squirrel heard a bird flies by, I'm like, oof.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So does anybody have any questions so far of what we've covered so far? Yes.
You said that who's going to be the priority target is going to change depending on the field. Any
Yeah.
tips for assessing a field and deciding what the priority target is? I'm guessing that the first one is experience. So while acquiring that,
If he's yelling,
that's
shoot
a
him
really
first.
good question. To Derek's point, if they're yelling orders out there, that's usually kind of a big flag that they're in charge. They're driving the bus in some way. So the thing is that especially if you're not really familiar with the other people on the field, it can be really difficult to assess, how much of a threat they are. There are some things, like looking at how decked out their kit is can be, because that usually is a sign of someone who's experienced or
Fancy
putting a lot of
shields.
time in their kit.
Fancy shields. If it's like plasti dip or has a shield that has a lot of stuff on it,
Also-
so probably a knight.
Is it a heater
is
shield?
it a heater shield?
No, well, there's people that have really nice
Yeah.
shields that are well decorated. It's like that person looks like they know what they're doing, kind of thing. But I've been fooled before.
The other thing is taking what you've seen in previous fights, and if you see somebody who's like constantly running on the field and just never stops. People in what do you call it, in Durham, a snot belly, for instance. You know exactly who I'm talking about. He always had this great skill of that his head would not move, but his rest of his body would just keep going. But again, paying attention to what's happening in previous fights. Maybe you saw somebody in another earlier fight. Another one is if somebody's really tanked out, that can be a definite target. If they're really tanked out, they may have their helmet on. So again, that kind of plays into that. But shooting into some place where they don't, that's not their head. Okay. So let's go ahead and stand up. Everybody grab your bow and your arrows. We're gonna go through some examples of
Do
things
you
you can
honestly
do.
think I need to practice hitting things? I,
Say I'm doing something like this and just holding it up.
Yeah.
Arrow hits there.
Which way is it traveling? It
It's
technically
assumed
would
to
hit
pass
whatever's behind your sword.
Okay.
So it's if it travels this way, it hits whatever is behind the weapon. So this would actually hit him in the chest.
yeah,
So he would be dead.
yeah. If there
That
are
gets a
no,
little hard to
Oh,
keep track of, honestly.
Right.
But
it doesn't even,
Um,
yeah, but if it's outside you, you're okay.
yeah. Now, for example, put your weapon in front of you, and if it comes in this way, that is definitely a kill. Okay? That makes sense?
Yeah.
All right. And so imagine these are your lines. So, as a combat archer, I'm going to use my line for cover. Cover and concealment, really. If they have shields, even better. Anything that I can do to obscure their vision of me is going to work. So, yes, this is a nice, I don't know how much you guys can actually see of me right now. Oh no, an arrow!
Very good door.
Yeah, I've got his right and left leg.
One of the things about being an archer, if you're supporting a line, is, use your shield line for cover. You can do it.
Well, it's not like it's not going, and at least you're hearing that thing more above.
Okay, so when you're shooting, take advantage of the fact that you might have people here who can cover you and protect you from other arrows. So this is always, I love this. And if you're flexible enough, coming down this way and shooting low is pretty handy. And since we're so close, I could half draw from here and I'd still be able to hit, and very little risk of hurting somebody on the other side. Next thing, don't stay put. I will tell you right now, if I see that you're just kind of standing there shooting, I'm going to try to shoot you. Shoot, then immediately change your position. If you're familiar with it in the artillery, they call it shoot and scoop. So the minute you fire around, you fire, and you immediately get out of there because the It's referred to as counterfire batteries. They have radars that can detect the trajectory of your rounds and backtrack that, and then they can start firing back at you. So
Is that what you do?
yes,
Oh, the worst.
actually,
That's the worst.
no. Interesting enough, I did air defense, so I did Patriot missiles. But so a little different animal. But anyways, so that again, try to stay mobile, shoot your gaps. Always helpful if you're going to be shooting between your buddies, give them a heads up so they don't actually do this. And I asked this question this morning: how many archers here have accidentally shot one of their teammates in the back of the head?
I saw that last week.
You haven't used the bow enough.
Right.
How many of us have shot siren in the back of the head? No, he literally went from this to this.
Ah.
And then he just like looked, I'm like, you stood up. And then another time he like went this way and then he came back this way. He got
But again, stay moving as much as you can. So one of the things that I do is that I keep my bow basically right here until I'm ready to shoot. And as soon as I'm ready to shoot, bring it up and then bring it right back down. Because that's another thing to look for combat archers. You see this thingy sticking up here, keep an eye out for that. If you see that there's an archer out there, they may not necessarily be targeting you, but it might be in your best interest to say arrow or, you know, archer or something, just to give them a heads up that, hey, there's an archer who's actively targeting. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about this part of it? And we'll in a little while we're gonna go over some exercises that kind of emphasize what this looks like when you're training. Okay?
What's your preferred angle that you're holding the ball when you're shooting?
I
in, like,
usually
straight
try to
vertical?
hold it vertical, or I may have a little bit of a canting on it, just a little bit, but not too much.
Because mine ends up either half or like 45.
But I mean, for the most part, I try to keep it this way, just so I'm in control of. I know that as long as this is more or less vertical, it's going to go pretty much where I'm pointing it at. When I do it this way, because of paradox, it might not necessarily. Are you all familiar with kind of the difference between a laser shot and a lobbing shot? Huh? Yes. So, as I like to put it, a lobbing shot is the wrap shot of archery, because it goes around things, or more technically, over things. But I find it, especially for going for other archers, it's the most effective way for me to get to them, because me trying to shoot a straight shot past my line safely, then past that line safely to hit the archer is kind of difficult. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice it. So I mean, this is an example of a laser shot, a lobbing shot, and you'll notice when I do this, I don't have to use as much power to use the same range. In fact, it's very easy to overshoot. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, it takes practice. But like I said, I find it incredibly useful because it goes over things. And I can shoot over another line and go after the archer who's behind them. Because, yes,
Are there any specific practicable techniques to get your
One standing.
yes.
Set out some buckets.
You know, in hindsight,
aim into buckets?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
all right. So if everyone will come here, this is your firing line. Go ahead and line up if you have a bow. Now what, like I said, rule number one when you're arching, especially on a line like this, make sure you know what's behind your target. I have a story for that. So at an event way back when, the person was targeting a fighter right at the edge of the field. What was behind that fighter? A little old lady who was just spectating the battle.
Oh no.
Yes, I think we can all kind of infer what exactly happened. Yes, she did get hit in the face with an arrow.
That's why.
And all she was doing was just spectating. So again, just like if you were using, like a gun or a pistol, know what's behind your target. Okay? So, the idea is to hit the shield without doing a straight shot. So, again, you're going to practice like so. Do 3 shots. Give it a try. You notice you don't have to pull that far back. And if we have any physics majors, 45-degree angle is going to give you the best range because sine theta equals cosine theta. Sorry. Anyways.
Archery in a prevailing headwind.
You notice that you're getting more range, but with less power from your bow. But obviously it travels slower and it has a path that's, unless you practice this actively, it's going to be tough to do. Okay? Anybody have any questions on lobbing? And obviously doing laser shots is much faster, but there's so many things that can get in the way in the process. Which is again why I always liken this to the wrap shot. It's designed to go over stuff. Practice drawing your weapon so that it becomes second nature to you. This is again why I've been, as I pointed out, I'm normalizing having this back here. I also am trying to practice doing this so that it stops being weird for me, which I obviously haven't got that quite down. Okay? Anybody have any other questions on that? Any observations that you'd like to share about lobbing shots?
Horrifyingly inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's kind of, remember when I was showing that I was, when I'd fire, this all was still the same. This is the same. The only thing I'm doing is tilting on my hip. So this all basically is the same structure, and I'm just leaning back so that all I'm doing is controlling that elevation.
Okay.
Nothing really else. Okay? Makes sense?
Couple of things I will say. If you're shooting at longer range lob shots and you're pulling it all the way back, you can gauge, based on where your bow is compared to where they are. Right? At close ranges, not going to be so much your friend, but if I'm here and I know I've got to be about here to throw it, 60 feet, based on, again, how far your movement is. Really requires keeping solid structure though. If your frame, your anchor, whatever aren't good, not worth your time.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on the lobbing shots? All right, so next thing we're going to cover, how to avoid getting shot by a combat archer. Hey, it's only fair that I present the opposing perspective. I touched on it before. One of the biggest things you can do is wear some kind of head protection, a helm, because it's a fact. There are archers out there who really, they enjoy maybe a little too much shooting people in the head. Just saying.
Why are you pointing at me? I've only shot 2 people in the head today so far.
Because I know you.
That's fair.
Head shots are the best shots.
So, true story that happened at a Wolfpack opener way back when. There was a spearman who had a helm, but their helm cut like right here and then came down. So this whole area right here was exposed, and that's where I shot him, because why not? Always, as I mentioned, keep scanning, keep your situational awareness about other archers. That's why when I say, look for the bow tip, that's a pretty telltale sign. Although some really good archers, they stay low and they'll be shooting the gaps at the lower levels. It's not like they're taking a knee to shoot, but they're crouching down and squatting. Yeah, basically like that. And
Can you do that again?
If you're running and you're getting targeted, do whatever you can to spoil the archer's aim. Do a stutter step, do a cut, change your pace. If you see that the archer is actively targeting you, one of the hardest things, the way to accurately hit somebody with lead is that you're making an assumption that that particular target is moving at the same speed, same distance for the entire time between when you release your arrow and when you hit, right? So anything you can do to spoil that, it's might be worthwhile, especially if you can see it. In other words, don't give the archer a predictable path to anticipate where you're going to be. I'll admit this is one of my things too. Be aware that the minute lay on is called, that you are a target on the field. I will, as soon as lay on, I will loose an arrow.
Yeah, half the time they're just standing around like this with their shields,
Yes.
not even looking.
Oh yeah, no.
Free target, kill
that's
somebody.
Pretty much. If you happen to have a rock or a javelin, chuck it at the archer. That can be enough to throw their aim off. Or it may cause them to move, or if they have to move out of the way, they might the arrow might fall off off the arrow rest. If you're charging an archer, as we mentioned, be aware that your most vulnerable points are going to be your head or your legs. Because most people, when they charge, they'll have their shield here. All that you have exposed is the legs or the head. And obviously, just keep in mind, your field awareness. And if you are on the line, try to stop all the projectiles that are coming your direction, because it may not hit you, but it might hit your buddy directly behind you. Okay? All right. So, anybody have any questions on how to avoid getting shot?
Have you tried headbutting arrows yet?
With my helmet on, no. I've seen it done pretty effectively, but no, I haven't got that kind of reflex built in to do that when I have a helmet
No,
on.
it's like I see the arrow coming, and I'm like, I'm not gonna move out of the way.
Yeah, it's such a unnatural reflex to intentionally move my head into the path of the arrow. I mean, I get it, but again, okay. So now we're going to go cover some training drills that we can do for helping with your accuracy. First thing is, let me talk about static targets. So, you ever looked at it? A gallon jug of milk? It's about the same size as a human head. The 32-ounce Gatorade bottles, roughly about the same diameter or same width as an as a thigh. And then 12-ounce cans, roughly about the same size as an arm or a lower leg. So if you're, if you just want to go and plink and just practice doing archery, that's, and you don't really have anybody else to train with, that's definitely an option.
So you're saying construct a dummy made out of plastic bottles? Yes.
You could.
You get a clothesline and have them hanging off the clothesline at the heights. So get a hook clothesline that's like well over your head, and then like hang it approximately like 5'5" with a big jug, and then put the arm where the arms would be.
And then they'll be moving too.
Yeah, you swing, put a little tennis ball there, and then you get like stones for the bodies, like bottles of it.
And kind of along the same lines, you can build an archery pel. If you're on the Bell Archers group, I've posted several iterations now of ones I've done. One was basically a sawhorse with these, with a 2x4, and there are these wonderful targets on Amazon that are plastic. They're plastic flip targets, and they're about, I think they're about 8 inches in diameter. They're designed to go on 2x4s. So you just mount them on there, and if you have some time afterwards, I can show you the pictures of that. The other iteration of that is I just got a baseball training pitching net, and it's amazing because number one, it's a net, so now I don't have to worry about shooting past it, and also the one that I got has targets that are 4 inches wide, 8 and 12 inches, so roughly about the same size as the arrowhead, which should be your goal. I know it's a tough thing to do, but ideally you should be able to hit targets that are no wider than your arrowhead. Okay? can I have a volunteer? Okay, Leonard, if you would, take about 3 steps that way, right here, turn around, and make a T with your arms. So I call this a T drill, and what you're going to do is, Leonard, call out a target you want me to hit. A little more specific, please.
Lower back.
Okay. Sorry, that was a little high.
It's a foam arrow.
Huh?
It's a foam arrow.
Yeah, but he's trying to get good.
A little more specific. Left arm. Left arm. Right arm. Right arm.
Go to the gym, then he'll.
All right, one more.
Lower body.
Right knee.
Left butt cheek.
Yeah, left butt cheek. There we go.
I hit the right one. Sorry.
No, -5. I think you need to practice my arrows.
This is this T drill you can do with a partner. If you shoot, you can actively shoot at the head, and you're going to hit them in the back of the head. So it's infinitely more friendly than trying to shoot them in the face. And as you have your partner call out targets, as you get better with your accuracy, you can start asking them to give you specific targets like upper right arm, left elbow, right elbow, back of left knee. I always like left lung, right kidney, center of the spine. I mean, if you've ever seen thank you. If you've ever seen the movie The Patriot, he tells his kids, aim small, miss small. So the smaller the target that you aim at, even if you're a little bit off in your aim, thank you so much, you will most likely hit your target, especially if you're aiming, center of mass. Okay. So if everybody can grab their bows and their arrows, we're going to do another line. I want to illustrate a thing that I call the snapshot drill. So just kind of let them how you were before. So the snapshot drill, the whole idea here, and ideally you would have a target that you're aiming at, whatever that might be. And the whole point is that you want to bring yourself into your firing position in one fluid movement, fire, and then immediately come back down. That is my definition of a snapshot. So, Derek, are you okay with me shooting?
Yep,
you?
definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Shoot me.
As I said, I normally start here. A snapshot would be something like this. And I missed. Let me try one more time.
Yep.
So I'm trying to get up into my firing position, shooting, and then coming right back down to minimize any exposure to other archers. The biggest thing here is trying to do it all in one fluid movement. And so as you're bringing it up, you're drawing back, you're releasing. And one of the big things when I use this technique on the field is that my aiming is not happening when my bow is up. It's happening right now. As I'm already visualizing where my target is and what I want to hit on the target before my bow ever goes into firing position. That makes sense? So, and it's also good because now the other side doesn't know what the heck you're aiming at until you fire. Okay? So, archers, if you're ready, go ahead and practice this. I ask you to try to do at least 3 arrows. So bring it up. Hold. Nice. Hold for just a second because we do have people behind you. Okay. All right, you guys ready? 3 arrows each if you have enough arrows. Please go ahead and try.
Sure. Shoot whoever's in front of you.
That wasn't the intention. It's supposed to be the intention.
It went right through the tavern.
Yeah. I made knockdown.
Okay, has everybody shot at least 3 times? Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? Targets, if you look through the arrow slot. So can everybody kind of get an idea of how this can be helpful on the field?
Yeah. It's biggest point that it keeps the bow way down here, and then by the time they see it, it's back down.
Exactly. That's exactly the whole point of the drill and also the shooting technique. Are instinctive shooters before, or are you aiming shooters?
Both?
Well,
Yeah,
instinctive
a little
is
of
instinctive is basically you're using a natural point of aim. So it's the easiest way I can explain it is that when it feels right, you shoot,
Yeah.
as opposed
Okay.
to you're lining it up and
Yep.
you're getting all of your corrections and then you're releasing the arrow.
Okay, I'm
So-
instinctive.
So
For bell, I would be instinctive with
yeah,
actual
absolutely.
points.
So it's
aim.
especially like for hunting. That's where you see that kind of technique being used, as opposed to regular target shooting, where they're actively lining up their bow on the target, getting everything perfect that way. So you can do that, but I would recommend, in terms of developing a skill, becoming an instinctive archer, because it really makes it. It reduces the amount of time that you have to sit there and wait and get yourself all properly aligned. Okay? So anybody else have any questions about that? All right, so the next drill that we're going to talk about, and this is kind of my favorite one. If we could have everybody kind of, I'm going to be shooting that way, so
Hi.
I'm going to be shooting this way.
Hi.
So, hi.
Hi.
Yep, you can just dip in.
Paul, yeah, I was gonna I was going to like the archer on the field today, but like they wouldn't let me because like I didn't get here in time for that stuff.
I understand.
So you just do this instead.
Okay, so the whole purpose of this drill is kind of to replicate the same kinds of movements that you'll do when you're out on the field. So usually, inevitably, my first, and normally I would have a target out there. Could somebody just drop a shield out there? No.
Or I was say live target.
Well, if you're willing to be a live target,
I do
okay.
not mind getting shot. at all.
a shield.
Okay.
So many willing targets.
I think it's upside down too.
Is it okay to still use these here?
Yeah, use the other arm.
Yeah, it should
Okay,
be.
thanks. Okay.
Just keep it down.
Thanks.
Try not to like shoot too high.
Okay.
What this drill is about is trying to replicate a lot of the movements and the shots that we take as archers. So usually that first shot is straight. So I'm moving, I'm only dropping down to get my knock. So here, backing up, because let's say the line's getting moved. I'm going for a longer shot. I'm still moving. Side shot. Yeah. And then coming forward, I'm just doing the last shot. Okay. So essentially the whole point of the drill is that you're shooting the same kinds of shot you actually do on the field. You know, long shots, short shots, quick shots, aim shots, whatever, and also replicating the movement that you're doing at the same time. Okay. Usually what I'll do is I either have a static target or a garbage can actually works pretty well for that one too. Okay. So, everybody?
Yeah.
Imagine that you're on the field right now. How are you moving? How are you drawing your arrows? How are you loading your bow? What are you looking for?
Aim higher.
Pretty much all of you.
Higher.
That was real close to my ear.
Yay! There we go.
Archer. Essentially, you're trying to avoid engaging in any kind of combat whatsoever, especially the melee kind. So you're shooting. A lot of times you end up staying on the periphery of the field and shooting inward. But the whole point is that if anybody comes at you to try and engage you in melee, you just run away.
Is there any other kind of archer? I mean,
Yeah.
which
Yes,
archers carry
yes,
backup weapons?
there's different kinds.
Like, what I mean is, like, are archers never supposed to use melee? Or some people, like, you have the archer and the melee?
Be both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Carry a sword.
I like being both.
Yeah, cool.
But again, being a skirmisher archer, a lot of times a skirmisher archer, they won't have a quiver. They'll just have whatever arrows that they're actually holding in their hand. And a lot of times they can just glean them along the way if they need to resupply. Again, as I mentioned, the skirmisher, if skirmishing arching is interesting to you, the whole idea is to avoid melee engagement
Practice
altogether.
currently.